Okay, so let's take a look at the requirements of the homework assignment, and then we'll do some examples of those skills. And then, it's going to be your job to apply those examples to our to the homework. And so I followed my own advice and I created a new folder called Week 02 Workspace, and I opened that here under Open Folder, and I chose Week 2 Workspace, and I created a new file called index.html. So this is where I'm going to write my code. Now I am going to throw in some HTML there so that it looks really good. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use Gemini, because why type this myself? Please write a basic HTML page with a script tag in the heading. And again, this is a perfect use for this. There we go. Has a lot of extra stuff, and I'm fine with that. Let's go and get this. All right. So if you're unfamiliar with HTML, this one put a little bit of extra stuff in here. This is the character set, which is Unicode. Don't have to worry about this. You don't really have to worry about this right now in the example. All we need to worry about is here. And look, I have console.log and a function and some body and stuff, which is perfect for our example. Okay. So again, our assignment is to initialize two variables and then set those two variables. The homework has, using the nursery rhyme. And then we're going to use those variables in a function, and then we're going to output the name of the current button pressed to the console. So let's just go ahead and run all of this stuff so we can see it. Great. It's a perfect example. All right. Again, you don't have to follow along with this part. I'm just going to show you what each of the things do as part of the assignment, the requirements of the assignment. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at setting a variable. Now, the important thing about setting a variable is I like to set my variables for most things we do, especially if they're going to be like a short program like this, right after the script tag. And the reason for it is because of something called scope. And what scope means is that if I set a variable here, it's accessible within the function. It's accessible if I call something down here. Like, it's accessible for everywhere. And some people might even call that a global variable. I'm going to set it here. You can set variables within functions as well. And so, do I want to set a variable within a function? If I set a variable in a function, it's not accessible outside of that function. Like, you can think of it as being kept secure by the function. So if that's the case, I want to be really aware of where my variables are set, where they are initialized, and not just where a value is set, but where they're initialized. So if it's initialized here, it's available everywhere. If it's initialized within the function, nothing else can really set it, and nothing else can really use it. Okay, so I told you before that one of the big problems I see is naming files and knowing where you keep your files. Those are two big problems. And the other one is scope of variables. So it's going to be important for us to keep our variables where they need to be. So let's go ahead and let's create a new variable. And I'm going to use what the example showed us, which is let let my message equal hello to IDIA619. Okay, put a semicolon there. And so I have now defined a value. I have now defined a variable called my message. A great way to check variables without affecting the code or without affecting the rest of your code is to use the console.log. And so I might type give me a space, console.log, parentheses, and whatever you put in here will come out. You'll see in the dev tools of your browser, and that's in the videos from the week 0 background information. So console.log, I can put in a string. You know, I can put in like hello, which is what's happening here. I can put in a number, 8675309, right? Like I can put that in there and it'll output that. But what I want to output is the variable of my message. So I'm going to put my message. I'm going to save it. I'm going to do my semicolon. Okay, I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to test it. And what you'll notice is that we don't see any console.log because it's not here. So we need to turn on the developer mode, which in class I showed was basically F12. So I'm going to, from now on, remember this decision and open the DevTools. And one of the things right here is the console. And you'll see it says hello to IDIA619. And it says hello from the head. So if we look at our code, we can see that there is a console.log message, my message, which is hello to IDIA619. I kind of want to add an exclamation point for effect. And then there's right after it, console.log, hello from the head. So we know that our code is currently able to send messages to here. All right. So that being said, my variable is working. So how can I make it so that when that I actually see it in an interaction? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, get rid of this console.log just so we don't have too many. And I'm going to change the function, my function alert button clicked, from button clicked as a string, you know, the words. I'm going to change that to my message. And when I hit save, I go down here, I'm going to refresh. Got my exclamation point for emphasis. If I hit click me, that's the message that gets loaded. So my variable in this case is actually working. And I'm doing, that's a really great example of what I'm looking for here. You know, I want 2 variables, so you have to do 2 variables. And then I set them to some text, and then I used it in a function so that the text on the right is set. So that's something you'll have to apply as part of that. And then the last thing is output the name or ID of the current button pressed to console.log. And that one I thought was going to be a little more complicated than what we've been talking about when it comes to variables. So let's look at our code. Now, interestingly enough, this button only has an on-click property. It doesn't have a name. So let's go ahead and give it I can give it a name or I can give it an ID. I'm going to give it an ID. ID equals button 01. And I can also give it a name. Name equals clicker. Why would I have both an ID and a name? Well, the reason I would do that, and again, look, I've already broken my own conventions. I did a capital at the beginning. We'll just do that as a lowercase. Why would I have both an ID and a name? It's because if you think about it, we're going to be creating buttons and they have IDs, and we need to be able to reference that button by ID, and we need to get its name. And so it has both an ID and a name. Think of this as more like the phone number of our button. So like we're going to call the phone number, and then we'll be able to get its name from that. Or this is the card catalog number on a book, and this is the title of the book, right? Those are two different things, and we need them in two different ways. So I have on click my function, right? So now let's go up to my function and let's start getting some values. And so I might set a variable that's only available in function my function. And so I might say something like let my button name equal. Now, if you remember from the very first class, we talked about like getting an ID from something or getting an object from an ID. And I said this is something we're going to do a lot of, and that's okay if you don't quite get it, but just know that this is how you do it. So you type document dot get ID, get element by ID. See, it gives me the code already. And you do a parentheses, and then you get which element ID. In this case, we're doing button 01. And then how do we reference the name? We put dot name. Now that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to, instead of having the name get called immediately, just set a variable that's going to figure out, that's going to collect the object of the button, right? So my button equals document.getElementID button01. And then we're going to alert my button dot name. I think this will work. Not 100% sure. The reason that we would want to do this, of course, is that there might be lots of things we need to get from my button. We might need to get my button's X or Y coordinates. We might need to get my button's title, like the inner HTML. Like there's different things I would want to get from that. So that's why it's better to just set a variable to the object of the button, and then be able to pull its name. So let's see if this works. It might not. If it doesn't, I'll definitely redo it. Okay. So do I see any errors? I don't see any errors. I don't see a console. I don't see any element. Oh, that's that. Okay. Don't see any errors. Let's hit click me. This page says clicker. That is what my object was named, was clicker. So it was able to go ahead and alert my button name. All right, so let's change a few things around now to make it more like the assignment. I'm going to alert my message, and I'm going to console.log my button dot name. Okay, let's save that. Let's refresh it. All right, let's click me. Hello, yes, that's my message. And then the name came out. I know what some of you are thinking, but Greg, you told me to, that you like to set things up here. It's true, I do like to set things up here. In this case, the let my button equals document.getElementID, this my button doesn't need to be used anywhere outside of here. And it's not going to need to be used anywhere outside of here. That's when I'm programming, it's not going to. So I can let that all exist. I'm not going to lie to you. I can do this. I can actually move this out to here. And it's going to work in the same way. Oh, it did not. Cannot read the properties of null reading name. All right, so there we go. Why did that do that? Interesting. So why did that do that? And it didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. Why is that? Let's take a look. Cannot read properties of null. Because in this case, the let actually locked it down to only being useful outside of the function. That's really interesting. All right, so scope it is as a problem. So we'll bring that back to the function. We'll save it. Let's go ahead and try again. Click me. Hello. And it came in with clicker. That's super weird. But I think it makes sense. I think that's what the let is doing. Let's just take a look one more time. So let's change it again. Let's move this let my button. I guess the let is actually... So I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't used the word let before when it came to my variables. In JavaScript, you actually really don't even need to. You can just set something like my button equals document dot get element by ID. So I'm going to save that. I bet this will work. It did not work. That is really interesting. Explain the console errors by using Copilot and Edge. Click that. Click that. Create a summary. That didn't help me at all. Okay. Well, so much for that AI assistance. All right, let's go back. And we're going to keep doing what I wanted to do, which is my initial gut was to put it in here, and that's where we're going to put it. I'm going to use let, which is the common, the newer convention that is best accepted. I didn't put a semicolon there, and again, it worked. So now we're going to run it. It's so terribly interesting. I'm not going to lie to you. Well, we can talk about that in class. And we're going to run it one more time. Saved it. Yep. Refresh it. Yep. Click it. Yes. Yes. All right. Clicker. Okay. So that is how we do the steps necessary for the beginner stages. This one, this one is do your best with when it comes to that for the beginner. But now we're going to do a video about the features of the advanced.